Have you ever heard people say you teach people how to treat you? I've heard it so many times, and for a long time, I actually thought it was one of those powerful statements like, okay, if someone is treating you badly, set boundaries, speak up, show them what you will and won't accept. And yes, I understand the point behind it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there's something about the statement that does not sit right with me. Because sometimes when you tell someone you taught them how to treat you, what they actually hear is, so it was my fault. If I had been stronger, they wouldn't have treated me that way. If I had respected myself more, maybe they would have respected me. And I don't think that's fair because nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks, you know what I want today? I want someone to disrespect me. I want someone to manipulate me. I want somebody to ignore my boundaries and make me question myself. Nobody wants that. And I think sometimes we forget that when we look at somebody from the outside and say, why did you stay? Or why did you allow that? Because when you are outside, when you're outside the situation, everything looks very clear. You're looking at it like, girl, leave. But when you're the person inside, it doesn't always feel that simple. Sometimes you don't even realize how unhealthy something is while you're in it. And I think that's the part people don't talk about enough. A lot of us learn what love looks like before we are even old enough to understand what love is. From our parents, from relationships around us, from the way people spoke to themselves or each other in our homes, from the way conflict was handled, from what we saw people forgive, and what we were told to tolerate. So imagine you grew up around relationships where there was always shouting, or somebody would get angry and stop speaking to the other person for days, or affection would disappear when somebody was upset, or love was there, but it was very, very unstable. As a child, you don't sit there analyzing it and saying, this is an unhealthy relationship dynamic. To you, it's just home. It's normal to you. And that's matters because sometimes when we become adults, we are attracted to things that feel familiar, even when they are not necessarily good for us. And I'm not saying this happens to everybody. I'm also not saying that everybody's relationship problem is because of childhood. But I think it's always why sometimes people stay in situations that from the outside look so obviously wrong. Sometimes your mind is telling you, I don't like this. But another part of you is saying, but I know this. And there's a difference between what feels good and what feels familiar. Sometimes we confuse the two. You can even confuse anxiety for chemistry. You think, oh my God, I've never felt like this about anybody before. Meanwhile, your nervous system is doing backflips. You haven't eaten properly, you haven't slept, you're staring at your phone, wondering why they haven't replied. Because these emotions are so intense, you start thinking, wow, this must be love. Maybe not. Sometimes peace feels boring when you're used to chaos. Sometimes somebody being consistent feels strange when you're used to having to work for affection. And sometimes the bare minimum feels like a huge romantic gesture when you've spent so much time receiving less than the bare minimum. That's why I struggle with the phrase, you teach people how to treat you. Because before you can supposedly teach somebody how to treat you, don't you first have to know what healthy treatment even looks like? How can you demand something you've never experienced? How can you recognize a healthy boundary if nobody ever taught you one? How do you recognize emotional safety if you spent years thinking love is supposed to hurt a little? You can't navigate a place properly when you've never been given a map. And I think instead of judging ourselves for the things we accepted in the past, maybe the better question is, what did I believe at the time? What did I think love was supposed to look like? What was I accepting because I genuinely didn't know that I deserved something different? And I think those questions are much kinder because healing shouldn't just be sitting here attacking your old self. What was wrong with me? Why was I so stupid? Why didn't I leave? Why didn't I let them do this to me? Why did I let them do this to me? And the truth is, maybe you weren't stupid. Maybe you were just hopeful. Maybe you loved somebody. Maybe you kept believing the version of them they showed you during the good moments. Maybe every time you were ready to leave, things got better for a little while. Maybe you genuinely thought the relationship could change. And maybe the person you were then simply didn't know what the person you are today knows. That's growth. You're supposed to look back at certain things and think, wow, I would never accept that today. That doesn't mean you should hate the person you were when you did accept it. Actually, I think you should have compassion for that person because they were working with whatever understanding they had at the time. And now you know more. Now you see things differently. Now maybe you know somebody constantly confusing you is not romantic. Somebody making you constantly prove your love is not romantic. Somebody punishing you whenever you express how you feel is not communication. Somebody making you afraid to bring up problems because you know it's going to turn into an argument. That's not peace. And once you start seeing those things clearly, your standards naturally change. That's the beautiful part. You don't have to become this hard person and who says nobody will ever hurt me again. Because realistically, we can't control other people. You can have the strongest boundaries in the world and somebody can still choose to disrespect you. Their behavior is their responsibility. What changes is what you do once you see it. Maybe before you would explain yourself 20 times, now you explain yourself once. Maybe before you would keep trying to convince somebody to understand why they hurt you. Now you realize that if somebody repeatedly hurts you and keep making your reaction the problem, there may not be anything left to explain. Maybe before you stayed because you thought love meant fighting for somebody no matter what. Now you understand that sometimes loving yourself means knowing when to stop fighting for something that is destroying you. And I think that's a much healthier way to look at the whole you teach people how to treat you conversation. I don't think our job is to teach grown adults how to be kind, how to communicate, how to respect another human being, how not to deliberately hurt somebody they claim to love. You can communicate your needs, you can set boundaries, you can say what you will and won't accept, but you cannot turn somebody into a good partner through enough patience. And I think that is such an important distinction because otherwise we end up putting so much responsibility on ourselves. If I communicate better, maybe they will change. If I become less emotional, maybe they will listen. If I stop bringing things up, maybe we'll have peace. If I love them enough, maybe they will finally understand. And slowly you start shrinking yourself just to keep the relationship alive. That isn't peace. That's survival. So maybe instead of saying, I taught them how to treat me, we can say, I accepted certain things because of what I understood about love at the time. And then ask, what do I understand now? Because that is where your power actually is. Not in blaming your past self, not in believing that somebody's bad behavior happened because you somehow trained them to behave badly, but in recognizing what you know today and choosing differently. You can say, I didn't know then, but I know now. I didn't recognize it then, but I recognize it now. I accepted it before, but I don't accept it anymore. And that is enough. That is enough. So if you ever looked back at a relationship, a friendship, or even a family situation and thought, why did I stay so long? Please give yourself some grace. You were making decisions with the version of yourself you had at the time. Now you have more information. Now you have more experience. Maybe you have stronger boundaries. Maybe your definition of love has completely changed. And that's the point. You don't need to punish your old self because your current self can see things more clearly. Just make different choices with what you know now. And I would absolutely love to hear what you think about this because I know people have very different opinions about the phrase. Do you believe we really teach people how to treat us? Or do you think that sometimes we simply tolerate things until we finally learn that we don't have to do that anymore? Let me know in the comments. And if this video made you think about something differently, or maybe you gave you a little bit of clarity, you can like the video, subscribe, and share it with somebody that might love to hear this. I just thought to share. I'll see you in my next video. Ciao.